It's also kind of difficult for a human to look like a blue-skinned cat elf, so I think this would be easier said than done. Hey everybody, it's WriterPunk. If you're new to my channel, I am a dark fantasy writer, artist, and hobbyist world builder. For this week's video, I'm answering the Writers Are Weird tag. I apologize for answering 2 tags in a row. The script for the video I was going to post this week wasn't quite as sensical as I wanted it to be, and I don't want to upload subpar work. The Writers Are Weird tag was originally created in September 2017 by Elliot Brooks, whose channel and questions I have linked in the description below. Timestamps will, as usual, be pinned in the comments. Question 1. Do you have bizarre internet searches? I would be surprised by any writer who didn't have at least one odd search in their history. I have Googled some weird things for my writing, mainly related to historical events or historical people. Other popular topics for me include anatomy-related things, death, poisons, and occasionally legal processes, but again in a historical context. The time period I aim to sort of give the impression of in most of my stories is between roughly 500 BCE and 500 CE. Early legal codes are going to be a bit different than modern laws, and a lot of things that were legal back then rightfully are not in modern times, so it's good to look into them to get an idea for how you want to flavor things. When I was a teenager, looking up certain topics would embarrass me, but as an adult, I'm barely fazed by anything less than, oh yeah, I'm going on an FBI watch list for this. Question 2. Do you write people you know into your stories? Bold of you to assume I know people. More seriously, I will say there are echoes in certain characters of people that I have liked and people I have not liked, especially in characters that I first conceptualized as a teenager. I would also not say that any character I've created was intended to be a fictionalized version of a real person, regardless of how I felt about them. I think I am more likely to include snatches of conversations and events that have happened in my life than I am to base an entire character on a single individual, especially if they're someone I don't like. I don't really see somebody who is not even deserving of my tolerance being someone I would devote so much time and energy to memorializing in one of my stories. Question 3. Does personal hygiene sometimes come second to writing? Oh no. In fact, I find that I actually cannot concentrate on writing or artwork or really anything else that I need to do that day if I am not showered, have brushed my hair and my teeth, and am dressed to at least a passable minimum. I'm not gonna dress like, I'm going to the office or anything just to sit down and write or to draw, but I want to be wearing at least some article of clothing that is decent. I am actually quite likely to take a shower specifically so that I can mull over something that I need to work through or figure out a solution to an issue, but this can also lead me to take way more showers than is reasonable, which is not good for my skin. I have extremely sensitive skin, like most soaps, most lotions, all of that sort of thing irritate it a lot, and I am still searching for that one perfect soap and that one perfect lotion that doesn't do those things. So no, I would say that personal hygiene always comes first for me. Question 4. Do you visit baby name websites for character names? Yes and no, even though this is kind of a yes or no question. I do visit baby name sites and name generator sites, not for actual names, but for syllables and for inspiration for names. I like to conlang. I don't know if I would call myself a conlanger because I don't have a degree in linguistics. I've actually never even taken a linguistics class. I'm just very interested in language. So I don't use English names or full names from any other language in any of my works. However, there's always an exception to the rule. The exception to this is in Marrow. The characters who are Uzniaka, which is basically loosely inspired by a geisha, let's say, will go by the name of a flower. So for example, Marrow's performing name is Belladonna, and there's Hyssop and Lily and Clove and Willow and that kind of thing. But they do have real names, and Marrow's legal name is something you'll have to find out by reading it when I post it finally. So anyway, in a pinch, though, when I'm looking for names, I will search for a name in a language similar to the feel I'm going for in my setting. For example, a lot of Kandrish names have Ukrainian, Belarusian, and Polish roots, and construct names that way. I have a longer process for quote-unquote formal name construction that takes a lot longer and would derail this video if I tried to describe it. Almost all of my characters will have their name changed at least once in the process as I feel out their personalities and what I think suits them best. The most prescient example of this would be Yarova from Silverblood. Her original name was Marwolaeth, which means death in Welsh. It then became Marwolaeth, Leifa, and when I decided on a Slavic bent for Candrasev's language family, it became Arova and then Yarova after a little bit more tinkering. Also, since we're talking about this, you don't have to pronounce any of my characters' names like they quote-unquote should be pronounced. It's totally fine if you just say Yarova or Yunara. I call them that usually when I'm just talking, but in my head, that's how these things are pronounced. Anyway. Question 5. Do you have a list of actors and actresses that would play your characters in an adaptation? This is a strong kind of. I don't view my stories ever becoming live-action adaptations. I think that animation, specifically 2D animation like in Avatar: The Last Airbender, suits my style more. And that's assuming that I ever get to the point where it would be appropriate to consider an adaptation for my stories. For my work in progress tag video, I did choose voice actors for the main cast of Marrow. Almost none of them were actually like voice actors by trade, but they are actors and actresses. But for the majority of my characters, I don't have a specific thespian in mind, and actually for that video I had to go think about it and then choose based on what I had decided specifically for that video. However, I do know a few composers that I'd want to look into to compose a soundtrack, and I also have a small army of vocalists and instrumentalists who I would love to contribute. Question 6. Have you ever stared at a stranger because they look like one of your characters? No. I am very uncomfortable making eye contact with people, so I rarely look at anyone long enough to think, hey, they look like character. It's also kind of difficult for a human to look like a blue-skinned cat elf, so I think this would be easier said than done. I have heard people's voices and thought, wow, they sound exactly like character does, but I can count the number of times that's happened on one hand to the exclusion of vocalists. Marrow, my current full-length work in progress, is very heavy on songs and poetry, given that it's about the fictional equivalent of something like a geisha, a waif, or a kisang. Actually, I recently found a Lithuanian singer whose name translates to Bumblebee. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce this because I don't want to get it wrong, that has a song called Lakstingalela, which means nightingale, in which their lead singer sounds exactly as I imagine the voice of my character, Rutgida. I've actually been listening to this song on repeat for like 3 days now, and it's starting to super irritate my husband, but it's such a good song. Question 7. Do you talk to yourself to work through scenes? Oh, absolutely. I like using italics for emphasis because I think it helps bring out the character's cadence and quirks better, so sometimes I'll mumble the conversation as I write to get their personal vernacular down. As for narrative, if I'm trying to describe a complicated action or position, I'll explain it out loud, usually to my husband, until I land on something that makes sense. Question 8. Do you ever act out the expressions or actions you're writing? Yes, particularly if I can't adequately describe an expression or an action. This is especially helpful for scenes with magic, combat, or a lot of moving around because it helps me place characters in a scene. This is also true if I'm trying to juggle a lot of characters in a scene, which has happened in almost everything I've written outside of 33 Tales of War so far, and Paul's Sacred Apple. More often what'll happen is I'll block it out once, like physically, and then I will block it out again via drawing, sort of like a comic book layout, so that I can have a permanent reference so I don't have to keep getting up and getting down. These are also not full-blown illustrations. They're usually stick people labeled with the character's first initial so that I can keep track of everything. Question 9. Have you ever practiced answering interview questions in case you become famous? No. I am a long ways away from being relevant enough to even need to worry about interview questions, so I just don't. If I do ever make it that far, I think it will be something I will have to sink or swim in at the moment, and I will probably sink like a lead weight because I am not good with spotlight. I have practiced my signature and penmanship in case I ever get to do a book signing because I write like a 5-year-old, so I also want to be one of those authors with a really nice looking signature, and due to the aforementioned lack of penmanship and the rate at which I hear some authors need to sign books, I want it to be a function of muscle memory so I don't embarrass myself in front of people who are kind enough and interested enough in what I have to say that they want me to sign something for them. And of course, ideally, whatever I write on the bookplate will be legible to the recipient. Question 10. Do you have a soundtrack or playlists for your book, characters, or certain themes? Oh, definitely. A lot of the emotional components of what I write are inspired by lyrics and or instrumentation. Looking at my Spotify playlists, out of 28, 13 are related to a specific character or book, and 5 are devoted to specific moods for writing without a connection to any specific project. At some point, I should probably get around to making music playlists on my channel so that I can share them with everyone if you're interested in hearing what I listen to. So, this has been Elliot Brooks' Writers Are Weird tag. I am going to tag anyone who wants to answer this because I think the more the merrier. If you've already answered this tag, why not try answering the Writers Are Punk tag that I created last week? If you do, let me know and I'll give it a watch. As always, I appreciate all likes, subscriptions, and comments. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.